Should be a couple seconds here.
Yeah, you were talking about the old school kickboxers. You know, Bronco Sigatek just passed away the other day, right?
Oh
And
man,
yeah, I worked with Dennis when they fought here in Las Vegas. We were still from the Fairfield area, Vacaville,
gotcha,
and
gotcha.
we.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, sorry we had a little bit of technical difficulties, but we're back on the line. This is part two with Jacob Stitch Duran. Jacob, you were telling us about going to New York. I believe it's Madison Square Garden, where one of the Klitschko's was fighting. Continue that story if you don't mind.
Yeah, we're talking about the mentality of boxing Cutman, which is kind of hilarious. Now that I understand the game, so I go to New York. I'm working with Vladimir Klitschko's fighting at Madison Square Garden, and I'm working one of the earlier fights. So I get to the arena and go into the dressing room, and I put my bag down, and I get down on my knees, and I open up, the bag to get my bucket out and everything, and this older guy from behind me comes up to me and says, "New York is my town. LA is your town." And I kind of turn around and I look at him, and I'm thinking to myself, "What the fuck's wrong with this guy?" But I said, "Hey, I'm from Las Vegas, But I'm thinking to myself, "Wow, man, it's like I just came into the Wild Wild West, right?" And this guy's kind of challenging me.
Oh my! It's like you were invading the guy's territory or
Yeah,
something.
yeah. And to this day, if there was a lineup, I would never be able to pick him up or pick him out. So,
Oh
but
my God.
I thought that was hilarious, man. L.A., New York is my town. L.A. is your town.
That's
I said, wow.
ridiculous.
Well,
That's ridiculous.
crazy.
Stitch, having wrapped so many hands, fixed so many cuts. Let's start with hand wraps. I hear your hand wraps are legendary, is what I hear. Um, who are some of the big names whose hands you wrapped, and maybe some interesting stories related to that?
Okay, well, I guess I can start off with the UFC. Everyone. Literally, every A-list fighter when I was in UFC, I wrapped them, every one of them,
Wow.
except for Tito Ortiz and Chuck Liddell. And the only reason why is because Tito would wrap his own hands, and he was the only fighter that I knew would wrap his own hands. And then John would wrap Chuck Liddell's hands, and that was the only reason. But everybody else, Brock
Wow.
Lesnar, Volkov, Fedor, you name them, Anderson Silva, Georges St. Pierre, everyone, Matt Hughes. I mean, I got stories with all of them. And boxing, same thing.
Yeah.
None of the
Yeah.
guys I've worked with, so it's tough to pick one, man. It's just there's volumes of them, and that's
Who
what blows my mind.
who
Is
are
that
who is some of your favorite fighters that you ever wrapped hands with? I know that's probably a hard question, but
yeah, it is. Yeah, they are. They're tough questions because that's like saying, do I like you better than Bam Bam? It's tough to pick one, right? But
yeah, yeah.
there's a lot of great moments I've had with a lot of great fighters. But Josh Barnett has always had a special place in my heart because when he went to fight for Pride, and I was out of the UFC. He called me and says, "How much would you charge for me to work with him um, when he fights in Pride?" So I was still with the UFC, but he called me. He wanted me when he left the UFC, and but he always treated me like gold. The Klitschko's. But I'll tell you a good story about Fedor Emelianenko. It's one of my best stories I got left.
For sure, for sure.
So I'm in Japan with Josh Barnett, and when I got there, all these fighters, these A-list fighters from Pride, wanted me to wrap their hands. And would say, "Look, man, I'm paying to bring Stitch over here my own dime. If you want him to wrap your hands, you got to pay him $500 each, right?" So he was like
Wow.
my agent, and they all wanted. Man, I'd make 2-3 grand easy every night. And
Wow.
so one time is the promoter comes and hits me up. Fedor had just come back from breaking his thumb, his first fight back. Broke his thumb like right here. And the promoter came in and asked me in the dressing room if I would wrap Fedor's hands. And man, I was so excited. I didn't talk about money or nothing like that. And so I went. I went into his dressing room, and being, I worked with the Klitschko's before, and some of the other, Soviet Union fighters. I kind of know their mentality. So I'm wrapping Fedor's hands, and Fedor ain't saying shit to me. I normally like to talk to these guys and relax them, and he says open, so I tell him open and close and what have you not. I wrap both hands, and then finally I say, okay, how do they feel? He goes, super, super. Man, bro, that's all he said, man. I walked out like my feet weren't even touching the ground, and he went out and fought, and I think he fought. God, I can't remember who he fought. Anyway, he ended up winning. Josh Barnett and I are going down the hall back to the bus to go to the hotel, and he sees us and he invites us up into the dressing room, and we have a shot of vodka with Fedor Emelianenko and placebo. So after that, I wrapped his hands and his brother Alexander for the longest. Every time they fought, and I was there, I wrapped their hands. And the last time I worked with Fedor was the Bellator show in San Jose. I walk into the lobby from the airport, and he's there sitting down with his team and all that, and he gets up and he comes to me and then he gives me a hug and he says, "I have an outfit for you. So I have sweats for you." And I look at him, I say, "Fedor, for me?" Yeah, he says, "Yeah." So he sends a guy up to the room, and brother, I got my own Fedor Emelianenko team sweats, has my name Stitch on the front and Stitch on the back, and talk about being priceless.
Wow,
But
man.
yeah, but what makes those special there, George, is that those were done when he was back home. So during those moments, out of sight, out of mind, but he remembered me, and that's what makes it real, real special.
Man, that's incredible, Stitch. Because for me, he's probably one of the greatest fighters of all time, in
No,
my
of course,
opinion.
of
So
course.
that's incredible. Another incredible thing about that story to me is, I've interacted with Josh Barnett a couple times. He's actually put fighters on our promotion before. So we own FightersRep Promotions. I own it. And it's a kickboxing promotion. We did a
Yes.
couple MMA shows in the past, but it's a kickboxing promotion. But even as a kickboxing promotion now for the last year, he's put fighters on my card, and he does a lot of cross training with Chad George, who's a great friend of mine. And Josh Barnett is he kind of has a reputation of being like a tough guy to deal with if you get on his bad side. So for him to be so close to you and appreciate you so much, it seems a little it seems like a special relationship for sure.
Yeah, no, it's everything's based on respect, and I remember we're flying up to Tokyo, and Josh, of course, is flying business, and I'm on coach, and uh, he comes over there and he brings me some grapes, and the man that's from first class up to coach, he brings me some grapes to munch on, not that was kind of class, but that's the kind of guy Josh Barnett is.
Yeah, very cool guy. I wanted to ask you onto the cuts now. A little bit more about the cuts. There have been some major cuts you've worked on. What are a couple that you can think of off the top of your head where you were like, oh man, I need to stop this, or this the trajectory of this fight can really go south.
Yeah, I got tons of them. Yeah. So, yeah, that's well, my first big coming out fight was when I when I moved to Las Vegas. Because in kickboxing, see, when I was in kickboxing, we traveled the world. I had a lot of good fighters, worked a lot of good fights, and had work cuts as I was working with kickboxers. So when I went to Vegas, that was like the farm league. So when I got to Vegas, I came with experience, and guys didn't know that. So I started working with fighters and just working cuts. But the first one my coming out was Raul Marquez fought Keith Mullins. That was when Oscar De La Hoya fought Hector Macho Camacho at the Thomas and Mack.
Wow.
Raul Marquez ended up with 5 cuts, like two big ones here, two here, and then one on the bridge of the nose. And there's something like 70 stitches, man.
Oh
So I
my
kept them in there,
God.
had my hands in there, and I mean, literally, these were gashes up here, and kept him in there. He defended his title, and that's where Chuck Bodak, the old legendary cut man, that had the tape on his head, looked like Colonel Sanders. He came up to me, and he's the one that first welcomed me to Las Vegas into the big leagues. And that was in MMA, but in boxing, tons of them. I mean, Uh, Forrest Griffith, when he fought Shogun, was a very special fight for me because I've always worked with Forrest, and Shogun was, when I used to go to Japan for Pride, he was there, and they used to call me Santana. Remind me to tell you a story about that. Calling me Santana, right? And but Forrest ended up fighting Shogun, and Forrest ended up with a major cut right here. Whenever you pop that big vein, it's tough to stop bleeding because it's a big vein and it bleeds. So he gets a big old, I think he took an elbow or something. It's what we call a star cut, where it goes in different angles. And I go in there and I start working on it, and I bring out everything, man. The adrenaline chloride, which is a vessel constrictor, and the Avitine, which is a coagulant, and I pack that Avitine, it's like cotton candy, into the wound. So anyway, I controlled the fight, and he ended up winning. It was a first time a UFC fighter fought a Pride fighter, and Forrest won. And but a lot of those, tons of them,
Yeah,
tons of them.
yeah.
It's kind of nice.
Well, I mean, you told me today you were on the line, with some reporters over from the UK. I'm sure they were asking you about Tyson Fury. I kind of wanted to get your thoughts on that Wilder fight too, and on that cut that Wilder had that Fury had that everybody was worried about.
Yeah.
Looked like it wasn't really a factor there, but I mean, what did you, because you would know better than the rest of us. I mean, what did you think about that cut heading into that fight?
Oh yeah, no, that was a major cut. It was definitely could have changed the whole concept of the whole direction of the fight. Could have easily been stopped. And the good thing is that it happened in Las Vegas, and in Las Vegas, when you understand the system and the game, these doctors in Las Vegas are the best. They understand, even though the cut looks real bad, as long as it's not doing any kind of optical damage or nerve damage, and it's not giving the fighter a disadvantage, and the cut man is, for the most part, controlling the bleeding, let the fight continue, right? And that was the situation there. But I had a reporter at ringside. I'm at home watching it, and I had a reporter at ringside that said, "Stitch, they need you in the corner of Tyson Fury." So people are thinking about me then, right? And but when I saw the fight, Jorge Capetillo is a very, very good friend of mine, and I guess you could say he was at the right place at the, because they brought him in as a cutman, but he didn't have a lot of cutman experience, and it's like they just threw him into the lion's den, and he had to do what he had to do, but he passed the test. Yeah. So he really gave the credibility of a cutman was there. So I was real glad for him, but it was a bad cut, no doubt about it.
Yeah. Yeah. And, your thoughts on the fight. I mean, obviously you've become a fight fan, I'm sure, since, you've been a fight fan since back when you were in overseas, in the Marines and the military. What was your thought on that fight, on that rematch especially?
Well, I was in the Air Force too, man. I want these Marine guys.
Sorry,
yeah. That guy's not the Marine. He's in the Air Force. He had the easy
Air
job.
Force, my bad, brother, my bad.
Yeah. So, but I forgot the question. What was the question again?
Yeah, so, I mean, what did you think about the rematch? Did it kind of go the way you expected? Because it seemed to be a very unexpected outcome for a lot of people.
No, it really was. If you look at the first fight, if you look at the times he got dropped, the 2 times he got dropped, and if you would have scored the fight, let's say without the knockdowns, Tyson Fury would have won the fight pretty easily. Yeah. So you kind of look at that, and the probability of getting dropped again twice in the next fight. I work on numbers all the time. Is the probability gets smaller. So, but the work that they did in giving him a game plan to beat Deontay Wilder was right on point. And I came in the last 2 weeks of his training, so I saw him when he was starting to peak. And everything that he did in the gym, he actually did in the fight. So the game plan went as game planned.
For sure. We have somebody in the chat right now, Hawker Mustang, saying, shout out to Stitch in the USAF.
My man.
For sure. I also thought Fury, I had predicted Fury was going to win. I didn't know where his head was at. That's the only thing I ever worry about with Fury. Is I feel like he loses focus or he might, fall back into that darkness. But it looks like he was able to come out of it.
You know, that's a good point, and that's a good observation. And let me give you my observation. And one of the things that I did during the interviews, and I did say this, is that because I've been in tons of camps, right? But when Tyson Fury trained for those 3 minutes of every round, whether he was shadow boxing or doing neck exercises or whatever he was doing, he literally stayed focused for those 3 minutes, and that I got to give him a lot of credit for. And so those are the things I look at. I look at those little things that go a long ways because it tells you mentally where his mind is, and his mind was right on schedule. I mean, he was pretty relaxed and he was self confident, and everything he said he did.
Do you think them doing a third fight is a good idea, Stitch?
Yeah, of course, it's just like Canelo and Triple G. It's you got to do it just for the sake of it has to be done. And you just because Deontay Wilder always has that knockout power.
Yeah.
Do you from point A to the next fight, from the last fight to this fight coming up? Do you get somebody in there to show them a little bit of defense, to show them how to set up some punches? Can you do that in this short period of time? How does the shell shock syndrome? Is it still within them? Will it be within them? That type of thing. Those are a lot of things that go through it. They're just going out there and throwing blows. So
A couple other questions I wanted to ask you about Wilder. The first is, if you're in his corner for that rematch and that ear is bleeding the way it is, what are you thinking and what do you do?
with the ear,
Yeah,
well, number one, you always you clean it out and you find out exactly where it's leaking from. If it's leaking deep inside the cavity where the eardrum is all that, then me personally, I would consult with the doctor or with the coroner and say, look, here's where he's bleeding. If it's cut on the outside, then of course there's no danger, nothing
yeah,
that's going
yeah,
to happen.
yeah,
At worst case scenario, it might plug up his ear a little bit with blood in there, but on the physical aspect, if not, but if it's deep inside and it's coming out and it's leaking, then that's a big thing that you should maybe discuss with the doctor or at least with the team. So
yeah.
those are things you got to evaluate.
Do you think Mark Breland made the right decision when he made it?
100% right. I
Yeah,
was telling Tyson Fury and Sugar Hill in the fifth round. I said, look, man, they're going to get ready to stop the fight. I knew at that point that he was taking such a beating, and the things with the beating, the shots that he was taking were the type of shots that won't cut you, maybe won't swallow you up, but they'll give you that long term damage. You see what I'm talking about?
yeah, yeah.
And he was receiving a lot of those, and would have received a lot more as the fight progressed. So did Mark really do the right job? Of course he did the right job. I did that with Anthony Durrell when he fought Skidegay on the rematch, and Andre Durrell was taking the same kind of shots that Deontay Wilder was taking, the ones that just deeply penetrate. And
Yeah, yeah.
and during the eighth round, I see the doctors are talking about stopping the fight. So as I'm working on Andre, I said, look, the doctors are thinking of stopping the fight. Do you want to continue? And he kind of says no about like this, and I said, no, stop the fight, stop the fight. And, nobody knew what was going on except him and I. And no, he said, no, I want to go one more round, one more round. I said, no. As long as once you say you're done, you're done. And they stopped the fight. And the next day, him and his wife called me like 8 in the morning. They thanked me. And he said, man, I appreciate it, Stitch. He goes, I just didn't know what was wrong with me. But that was the same type of scenario. So a lot of applause to Mark Breland to do what he did.
Yeah, no, I would agree 100%, and I appreciate your perspective on that, Stitch. How long were you with Fury in his camp?
2 weeks. That was it. I'll tell you, the best 2 weeks of my life, though, man. It was some of the funnest 2 weeks of my life. Yeah, it was good. Well, I met him 2 weeks before the fight, but then I had to leave Friday of the first week because I had the bare knuckle fights Saturday in Florida, and I came back Sunday, and then Monday I was with him. But the last week was all media and just shakeout days and all that. But just to hang out with the team and get to know him as a person and just kind of get the mental game with him and the psychological game with him and just become one, and it paid off.
You're saying the funnest 2 weeks of your life. I mean, why do you say that?
Well,
Is he that
well,
entertaining?
yeah. I mean, the whole week, not of my life. It's the best 2 weeks in a long, 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 long time. Because nobody has 2 weeks that they have a good time. But just because it was media week before, man, brother, I did like 40 interviews the week of the fight,
Oh
and
my
I did maybe
God.
like 15, 20 the week after the fight, and it was insane. Everywhere I went was the Tyson Fury story. Everywhere I went was the Tyson Fury story, and I was right in the middle of it.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, it was pretty special. To have a lot of people come up to you and congratulate you and best job and this and that. Just it was a good feeling. It's good to know that they had some respect for me and they brought me in as a cut man, and it was good for the exposure of the importance of hiring a cut man.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it was a good night for us.
Objectively speaking, uh, it'd probably be hard since you were in his camp, but I mean, do you think anybody is better than Tyson Fury in the heavyweight division?
Skill wise, right now, I don't think so. But is anybody capable of knocking them out? Yeah, of course, everybody's capable of getting knocked out.
Yeah.
I've seen it with the Klitschko's, so everybody has a history. Everybody's going to win and everybody's going to lose, except Floyd Mayweather. But for the heavyweights, for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Like I said, and I mentioned that today with these guys from the UK. I do so many fights that I don't look at them as how great of a champion they are anymore, because all the guys I work with can fight. But it's the personalities that come with it, the characters that come with it. That's what makes my job so special. And you have to be there to really appreciate that. I did an interview with ESPN about Brock Lesnar. They want to know some of the people that work with him and what have you not. And then you got Jim McMahon and you got all these big people that work with him. And I was one of them. But I got to see, like you were talking about Josh Barnett. Brock Lesnar had that macho thing, but then with me, he always melted into me. So I got to see both sides of Brock Lesnar, and those are what make my job so much fun.
Hawker Mustang is in the chat, Stitch. He says, what is the worst case of bleeding that comes to mind in a fight? And he says, I'm a U.S. Air Force veteran as well.
My man, I appreciate it. Yeah, it's great. I've gone to Langley Air Force Base. I've made military tours. And when I go to like Langley Air Force Base, I'm like the big shit. So that was good. But you know what? Now this vein right here that we have, I always say when you laugh and it pops out. Jay Haran took a knee from Jonathan Goulet, and the cut was only about this big, but it severed that vein, and he just bled like a pig. And to me, that's the bloodiest fight I've ever worked in my life. And both Jay and Jonathan Goulet had blood from the top of the head to the bottom of the feet. And I try to work on the cut, and I close it up, and I put Vaseline on it, and once I close it up, the blood starts coming right out. And I knew that it was going to be a tough one, but that's the toughest one right there.
A lot of people, they kind of get lightheaded, they get woozy when it comes to all that blood and stuff, Stitch. Did you do something perhaps in the military that may have interested you in like human anatomy or something like this to get you going down this road?
Nah, brother, I just got a high school diploma, man. I'm just good at what I do. But now this fight with Jonathan Goulet and Jonathan Goulet and that bloodiest fight, it was so bloody it made me nauseated.
Wow,
So
wow.
and Jay Haran is so proud of that moment because he's part of my history on that. And if you go to Randy Couture's gym, Extreme Couture here in Las Vegas, that mat is up on their wall. But bloodiest fight ever. Yeah, it was a trip, man. It's just that metal that you smell of blood.
Yeah,
It made me nauseated.
That's incredible. That's
Yeah.
incredible, Stitch. And you mentioned you're also working with the Bare Knuckle Fighting Championship as well. I mean, how's that
Yeah.
experience been?
It's tremendous, man. The thing is working with Dave Fallman and his crew. They're top of the line people, and when Dave got a hold of me, uh, the first fights were in Wyoming, and I accepted the offer just to go see the safety factors of how they were going to take care of these fighters. And when I got there, they had Dan Margliotti and Bill Clancy and Antonio Tarver, and some other good quality people. And they had the rules laid out, and the Wyoming Commission was there, and we went over every rule and regulation step by step, and some of the things that we felt through our experience that could be adjusted, they adjusted it. And so I like working with them, but I tell you what, man, these fighters, it's a different world. A lot of the guys I worked with before, either through boxing or MMA, but I would say the mental game of a boxer in MMA sits about here, and to get into bare knuckle fighting, your mentality has to grow that much more. These guys
Wow.
are true gladiators, man. So it's fun working with them, and Dave Feldman and these guys, they take care of the fighters real well.
Do you wrap their hands? Do you wrap
No,
hands for these guys?
no, no. That's what I like about that part two. About not number one, I get a shit with the work, it's guaranteed, but I
Yeah.
don't have to wrap hands. And guys have asked me to wrap their hands, but I tell them, I said, look, in all fairness, I don't know that technique, and I wouldn't wrap your hands because if you bring it, I don't want you to say that Stitch wrap my hands. But no, they do their own, and it's just when they wrap, it has to be below the hand down here,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
to protect the metacarpals, the wrist and the thumb, and for that I applaud them. But I love working it, man, and the sport is growing pretty big.
What do you think, having so much expertise in wrapping hands, what do you think is the most sort of sensitive area of the hand that you see? I guess the most valuable spot to protect.
The metacarpals right there. See how they all banged up?
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
what,
yeah.
these balls right here, because you hit, you jam it, and that's how you get
Gotcha.
popped. And a lot of guys, when they break their hands or they jack up their metacarpals, it's hitting somebody on top of the head, or hitting them in the elbow in an awkward position. But that's the number one injury. And the knuckles, believe it or not, they have their own natural shock absorbers. So that's not to say they don't happen, but it's not as frequent as metacarpals, and shock absorbers kind of protect themselves, and the wrist, the thumb. So metacarpals are probably number one.
I see, I see. Well, bare knuckle boxing, boxing, kickboxing, Muay Thai, Taekwondo, MMA. You've done it all. You've done it all. You're definitely a fan of combat sports. If you had to pick one, which is your favorite one, if you can pick one?
Oh man, you know what? It used to be MMA. Well, I've gone through them all. And I like them all. But people used to ask me, "What do you like better, MMA or boxing?" Well, MMA just because of the action. But I tell you, this sport of bare knuckle fights that just kicked in, and as a fan, I like it big time.
Yeah.
But it's once again, it's tough. Guaranteed work, definitely bare knuckle fights. Definitely the UFC or MMA. Boxing, shit, if I get one cut, I can do that with my eyes closed. So
Yeah,
so that's
yeah.
a and let me add, now that we're talking about the bare knuckle fights, is during this lockdown that we're here with this virus, I've been working with CBD Science. This guy Jay Timms, which is the president of CBD Science, contacted me, and they had created a cream that helps the healing stages of a cut. So he asked me, because he knew what I did, and I asked him, I said, well, what proof source do you have? Everybody has CBD this and this CBD does that, but where's your proof source? He said, well, that's why I called you. So anyway, uh, the proof sources that we've been getting with these guys is the last three bare knuckle fight events that we've been to. Dave Feldman has let us go, and I introduced Jay to the team or to the fighters, and once because a lot of them get cut, bro. Once they get cut, they'll sew them up in the dressing room. Jay will take a picture of them, give them the cream. They apply it every week, every day, every week. They'll send a picture, and the results have been tremendous. It has
Yeah.
um, it has CBD, has stem cell, has collagen, and vitamin E. So anyway, getting to this point is I just signed an agreement where I'll be the brand ambassador for CBD Science. So that just happened this week. You're the first. Yeah,
Congratulations on
you're the
that,
first.
Stitch.
You're the first media guy to know about it.
Hey, I
So
love it, my man. I love it. Big shout out to CBD Science then.
yeah, CBD Science, and then I mean things have been great. One more round. I'm back with one more round, which is a great story also. Uh,
And that's the
Mark,
that's the apparel company, right?
yes, yes. So if we'll go back to history now, here, George. When I started off with tap out, and then things went. Anyway, one more round. Mark Zucker, the owner of One More Round, used to own BC Ethics, and he was looking at the Balboa movie where Rocky is saying something about I have to go one more round, and
Ah,
he thought, man, that makes so much sense for anything in life. So, being that he already had an apparel company, he created One More Round, and the first guy that he sponsored was Matt Hughes. And Matt told Mark, he says, Mark, if you want to sponsor anybody that will help you promote One More Round, will be Stitch, because he gives the fighters one more round. So he contacted me and we became, he sponsored me to the point where people thought it was my company. So
wow.
anyway, things didn't go, where the UFC is asking for these guys to pay like 50 to 100,000, for them to play and sponsor guys like us. And he couldn't do it. So he kind of got out of the picture. But fast forward to, this year or late last year when I worked with KSI, the YouTuber that fought Logan Paul.
Oh, for sure.
Uh,
That was a
yeah,
big celebrity fight there.
oh, it was like 40 million people combined that both these guys
Jesus.
had. They flew us in a private jet from Vegas to LA, and we stayed at a fancy hotel in Beverly Hills, and it was a different world. But anyway, Mark saw because I hadn't seen Mark in years and years, but I always believed in one more round. In fact, I created a hand wrapping video called "Giving the Fighters One More Round," and but he got a hold of me and it just inspired him to relaunch One More Round. So, long story short to that is I'm partnered up with Mark with One More Round. And when I worked with Tyson Fury, if you look at the fights again, you'll see the cornerman jacket that I'm wearing. We created for the Tyson Fury fight. I had my sponsors, and on the back, One More Round. So we're back in the game.
Very cool, Stitch.
Yeah.
Congrats, congrats on the CBD Science
Right.
deal. Also, I mean, aren't you also a part of or owner of Cutman for Hire Supplies? Is it something like that?
Let me tell you about Cutman for Hire Supplies. Juan Ramirez is a Cutman also, and a good friend of mine. And when I created Stitch Premium as my athletic tank and my KO swells, I put them out in the market and it's selling very well. But with all the traveling that I was doing, I couldn't handle all the orders and whatever not on time. So through a dream, and this is the way my life works, is through a dream, I had a dream to call Juan up. And when I called him, I said, Juan, I had a dream about you and I working together. Would you be interested in carrying my products, the Stitch Premium products? And of course, it lit a fuse under him, and he knows that working together that we could partner up. But yeah, we became partners on that. It's like I told him, my goal is for you to have this business, is you do this full time, and so we're partnered up on that, man. So Cutman for Hire Supplies, he's doing a great job, and I'm there to cover his back.
I mean, it's so valuable, Stitch. Your story, I think, is so important to young entrepreneurs, because you really niched down. I mean, I don't think anybody in their right mind would ever believe that somebody who decided to just, I want to be a cut man, I'm moving to Vegas to be a cut man, could eventually create, what seems to be an empire, stemming from being a cut man. I mean, it's really incredible.
Yeah, it's I've always been a marketing savant. That's how it, so literally all this was by design. Don't take it wrong. I mean, I work hard to get to this point, but everything I've done it on a marketing purpose,
Hmm.
and I've created a brand. And I understand that. I mean, I've written a couple books. From the Fields to the Garden one, and from the Fields to the Garden two, and those are available at Amazon. Got my own Stitch Premium products, and now I'm back in the apparel and CBD science, and hassles now, for the outfits that I wear. So, yeah, it's been in movies, so it's been a crazy life.
Well, Stitch, I hope you one day have a dream about Fighters Rep, the only kickboxing promotion with a pro license in the state of California. I would love to one day do anything with you. It doesn't matter what it is, it would be amazing. Talk of SD is in the chat. He said, I used to watch Mercito Gesta backstage wrap his own hands before a fight. Thoughts on this? A good or bad thing? Fighters wrapping their own hands, Stitch.
No, no, of course it's a good thing, because I always tell cutmen when they're learning how to rap is wrap your own hands, because in that way nobody knows your hands better than yourself, and if you understand the proper techniques, then by all means, keep in mind the fighter's the boss. So whatever makes that fighter give whatever opportunity he has to think that he's going to win a fight is do it. But yeah, of course, that's not a bad idea, especially if they do a good job. And like Tito Ortiz, he did a good job.
Yeah. All right. Lost One says a massive, massive fan of Stitch, and we also have a congrats to you for your CBD Science deal. It looks like you've got a lot of fans in the chat here. I wanted to ask you. You were talking to me about that cut that happened sort of in the middle of the forehead on that vein. Is that the same cut that we saw on Badu Jack?
Yes, exactly. 100% right. And and I'm working with Badu Jack because of that fight. But let me go back. That also the first time I worked with Vladimir Klitschko, and I was with Vladimir Klitschko for 12, 13 years. Heavyweight champion of the world. But the first fight I worked with him was here in Las Vegas at Caesar's Palace, and it was his first comeback fight after he lost his world title to Lehman Brewster. So he wins the first 3 rounds. He's not looking very good. He's fighting Lehman, DeVero Williamson. In the fourth round, he gets dropped with the jab. With the cheap shot. It was a quick flash knockdown. And so it's a close fight, but he's still winning by 1 round. Well, in the fifth round, he gets an unintentional headbutt. And, I take that back. He gets in the fourth round. And so when he comes to me, at that point, it's that same kind of cut where you pop that big vein. And I've worked on those cuts before in the UFC. But at that point, I told Vladimir Klitschko, I said, look, and Vitaly, I said, look, you got a bad cut. You're winning the fight. I'm going to have the doctor stop the fight. So when the doctor came, she knows my work. And she says, what do you think, Stitch? And I go like this and open up the cut. I said, yeah, it's pretty bad. So she ended up stopping the fight, right? Went to the scorecards. Vladimir Klitschko won the fight through the points, barely by that 1 point, and ended up becoming the heavyweight champion of the world again for 10 years. So, but in the next day, then this same doctor calls me and she says, I want you to know that I just spoke to Emmanuel Stewart and Vladimir, and the plastic surgeon says that it was a good thing that you stopped the fight when you did, because it was real close to an optical nerve, and if you would have severed that nerve, you would have created some nerve damage. So with Badu Jack, yeah, the same thing, and unfortunately, Russ is a good friend of mine, but they weren't accustomed to having that type of big cut and didn't know what to do with it, literally.
Yeah, that was the most I think the most disturbing looking cut I've ever seen. One of them.
I felt so sorry for Badu Jack. They tried, but they just didn't. They had never been in that position. But when he's shaking his head and just kind of clearing all the blood away from his face, to me, at that point, that's when a good corner comes in, where you should have stopped it. It would have gone to the scorecards, and he would have probably still lost on points. But the recourse for a rematch would have been better than if he just went the distance and he lost it on points, and there's no call for a rematch. So, it's knowing the game inside and out, besides just wrapping hands and working cuts.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely been helpful. One thing I wanted you to ask. You mentioned you were with Vladimir Klitschko for several years. You said about 12 years you worked with him.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Did you think when he fought Tyson Fury in Dusseldorf that Tyson Fury was going to beat him?
No, of course not. I've talked about it, and I told Tyson Fury, when I met him, I said, when you fought Vladimir, and Vladimir lost, I thought Vladimir just had a bad day. But then I saw you fighting Deontay Wilder, and I became a fan of yours because you're very good at what you do, and nobody could do what you do. So, yeah, it doesn't seem to be a fluke. I think Tyson Fury just kind of took Vladimir out of his game plan, and
Yeah.
it's easy for him to do, and hard for any fighter to kind of respond with a good plan B to beat Tyson Fury. Just so unorthodox, big time. He looks
Yeah.
like he looks like he can't fight, but he fights.
And he can
So
move, and he can
yeah,
move.
yeah,
And,
moves
and
like a middleweight.
And you know what, Stitch? I'm not by any means always right on who I pick to fight. I mean, I get some right, I get some wrong. But, after watching Tyson Fury fight Derek Chisora the second time, especially, going into the Klitschko fight, I actually predicted him to win because I felt like Klitschko was just too stiff for the guy. And when it actually happened, I mean, that was like the biggest feather in my cap in my history of watching fights. I was running around telling everyone I told you so. Of course, a part of me thought Klitschko would win. But, I think it's very interesting that you worked with Klitschko for so long, and now you're working with the guy who kind of beat the man. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah, yeah, and it's funny because, but in MMA I do that all the time. In fact, I do all the time where I could be wrapping your hands and wrapping your opponent's hands at the same time, and I just happen to be working in your corner.
Yeah.
And these guys understand that. But a question that was asked during one of the interviews is, "What do you think Vladimir Klitschko would say?" And my response was, I think he would be proud of me because, we're sportsmen, number
Yeah.
one, and this
Yeah.
is a sport, right? And I think Vladimir would be proud to say, you know what, these guys are smart enough to know that they have Stitch, which was my cut man, and I brought him in because he was a good cut man, So to Vladimir, that's like a feather in his cap.
Yeah, and for me, I was asking that question because I think it goes more to your credibility. Not that you need it anymore, but you went from working with one lineal heavyweight champion to working with the successor lineal
Yeah.
heavyweight champion. You know,
And I might work with another one that beats Tyson Fury down the road. Who knows?
there, there
It's
you
just.
go.
But that's a good point. And if it came to the point where, let's say Vladimir came out of retirement and he wanted to fight Tyson Fury, then of course, what would I do? Well, either not work the fight or work with the fighter that I've been with the longest, out of respect.
I see. I
So
see. We have lost one in the chat, Stitch. He's asking, question for Stitch, favorite fight he's ever been a part of and why? Much love.
hey, I'll tell you what, this one with Tyson Fury had to fall up there in one of the top three. The fight with Vladimir Klitschko and Anthony Joshua.
Wow, that was a great one.
Those were special, and you know the story between Tyson Fury. But I'll tell you what, I think outside of working with Vladimir for so many years, but I didn't see Vladimir till Friday, till the weigh-ins, because my daughter Carla had gotten married in the island of Crete, and I didn't get to London until Thursday night. So I see him in the dressing room before he gets on the scales, and we've always had our chats, and he has a lot of respect for me, of course, me for him. And finally, I put my hand on his shoulder, and I look at him, and I said, "Look, Vladimir, don't worry about nothing tomorrow. I'm going to take care of you like you're my son." And I leave him, right? Because psychology, we talked about that. So here we are in front of 90,000 people in Wembley Stadium, and all these Brits are going fanatic, crazy, crazy. It's just a
Oh
buzz.
my
And
God.
I'm putting the final Vaseline on Vladimir, and we're about this far apart, right in front of all these millions and millions of people. And he looks at me and says, "You could call me son." And talk about a special moment. It gave me chills, but I knew that I had gotten into his head that night before because these guys can't sleep. They're nervous. They're thinking about the fight, and I'm sure that ran through his head many, many times. "Don't worry about anything tomorrow. I'm going to take care of you like you're my son." And he went out there and probably had the best fight of his career, even though he lost.
90,000 people, Stitch.
Insane.
How
Yeah.
was that? How was that?
I've been to a lot of crowds. I've been, in Saitama Arena with a lot of people, but 90,000 Brits is like 150,000 of somebody else. Because it was so loud walking in, hearing the introductions that it was just a buzz, and phenomenal feeling.
Are they the best boxing fans in the world, Stitch?
The Brits.
Yeah,
The Brits and the Irish, yeah, they party down, man. That's for
yeah.
sure. And they love their fighters.
And that's a Chicano saying that.
Yeah, yeah, of course. Well, I've been there. I've seen
Yeah,
it.
yeah,
I've seen it. These guys are phenomenal.
for sure. Last one is asking any funny Cutman stories.
Uh, yeah, I don't know about funny. I guess maybe so. I'll tell you this one. When I first started with the UFC, I'm working with Jason Mayhem Miller. I think he fought George St. Pierre. And our job is when the fighters get cut, they get blood, is to clean them up before they get on the camera. So I go up to Jason Miller, and he's a crazy guy anyway. And I'm trying to clean his blood off, and he looks at me and says, "Get the fuck out of my line." And I look at him, and I just took like 3, 4, 5 steps backwards,
Oh my
and,
God.
I said, well, that's the way he wants it. But I ran into him down the road, months later. And he said, man, I was just kidding with you, man. I apologize. So but nah, I mean, a lot of great stories. Yeah, we've had a lot of funny stories. I guess I can tell you one that with Leon Taz, which was the original Cutman from UFC number one. I joined him when Dana brought me in to work with the UFC. At that time, it was just Leon Tabs and myself. He was a Cutman for Bernard Hopkins in boxing. But we're in Stockholm, Sweden, and we're at a Chinese restaurant of all places, and we're eating. And I look at Leon, and he just sweating bullets. I said, Leon, are you okay? And he says, man, he goes, these chilies are hot. And it's those little dry red chilies they put in there for flavor. You're not supposed
Yeah,
to eat.
yeah. He ate that thing.
I'm laughing to myself. I said, Leon, those are for flavor. You're not supposed to eat them. And I had tears out of my eyes, and his ass is just burning. And I just laughing, and that was a funny moment with him. But I've had a lot of good moments.
Man, it's I feel like a kid in a candy store listening to all these stories. Jacob Stitch Duran. If you guys haven't already, be sure to give us a like, follow, and subscribe to the channel. We're blessed to have guests like Stitch Duran on the show, and definitely give him a follow too. On the screen, you can see his Instagram handle. It's at Stitch Duran. That's where you guys can follow him on Instagram if you want to keep up with Stitch. Check out his CBD science, his Cutman for hire supplies, and his one more round apparel. Stitch, as excited as I am to talk to you, you seem just as excited to just be a part of and talk about combat sports, man. You still love this like it's the first day.
Oh man, I was talking to the guy that came and cleaned our pool today, and I said, I'm used to not doing nothing,
Gotcha, gotcha.
because my job is normally if I work a fight on Saturday, I'll leave Friday, do the fight Saturday, come home Sunday. But Monday through Thursdays, I'm home doing this. But I'll go up to the Mayweather gym and Bones Adams gym and just kind of barbershop talk, just kind of shoot the shit with everybody. But this is what I enjoy doing,
Yeah.
sitting there and just talking barbershop, talking about boxing and MMA. So it's not a bad life.
Stitch, who is, and it certainly isn't a bad life. It sounds like a wonderful life,
Yeah,
actually.
that's tremendous.
But who do you think is the best fighter that you've ever seen in boxing? In boxing,
I don't
because
know.
you worked with Mayweather.
Yeah, no, I never did work with Floyd,
Oh, okay.
but Floyd definitely tremendous fighter. But as I look at that, not the prettiest fighter, but the guy that probably polished up the game for himself was Andre Ward. And I started with Andre from when he turned pro, and I knew him in the amateurs. But a lot of the fights that I was working with him, I'm thinking, he's going to get beat by this guy. He's going to get beat by this guy. But nobody ever beat him, and so I got to give him a lot of props.
Man, he was incredible to watch. Were you nervous when he joined that Super Six, Super
Yeah.
middleweight series? That was incredible, man.
Yeah, he fought Arthur Abraham, and I mean, he fought all these guys, Carl Froch, and just like I say, I was prepared. I
Yeah,
stayed prepared for the worst case scenario with Andre Ward, and it never came.
yeah.
So that was a good thing.
And you worked with him throughout his career?
Yeah, I missed I think 2 fights throughout his career because I was already booked for UFC fights, and that was the UFC. They let me adjust my fights, but at that time I already had my visas. I think like Brazil or something like that. So I didn't want to take advantage of the program. So, but yeah, just 2 fights.
Man, Stitch, awesome. I feel like, I can ask you a million more questions, brother, but we've already been on the line with you for over an hour. So, I want to thank you so much for your time and your generosity and, giving us the opportunity to talk to you here, brother.
No, so I appreciate it, man. And you have good questions. You got a good show, and yeah, you guys subscribe, man, because we'll be doing this again. I got a shitload of stories, man. So whenever you want to do that, give me a call.
I would love that, Stitch. I
All
wouldn't
right.
mind doing a weekly, bi-weekly show with you, brother, if you wanted to do
Yeah,
that, man.
yeah,
But,
it's great. I used to co-host a radio show, so I understand the importance of always calling back and always showing respect to the people that want to interview you and what have you not. So that I understand.
well, thank you so much, Stitch. I mean, is there anything you want to say before I let you go? Any more sponsors or people you want to shout out in your life?
No, just real quick. Then outside of what's the great things happening in my life, with CBD Science and One More Round and Cutman for Hire. But they're also filming a documentary based on my life, based off the book From the Fields to the Garden. So we started filming, and then this crazy thing kicked in. But we it's called From the Fields to the Garden: The Life of Jacob Stitch Duran, and the garden, of course, is Madison Square Garden. So when I signed with these guys, and Uriah Faber is one of the producers, Gerald Roxburgh is a producer, Danny Costa is a director, and they sent a 4-man crew to New York when I worked with Triple G. So we got that already in the can, and we were going to start interviewing the Anderson Silvas, the Mike Tysons, the Triple Gs, and the Diaz brothers, and Andre Wards, and all these guys. But then this kicked in, so that will continue when we do that. Hopefully, we'll get it out. It's like a 90-minute piece, which they're going to be going up to with the big boys, and it's going to be an awesome documentary. So I'm looking forward to it.
Very cool. I definitely look forward to it. And before we let you go, I got to get your prediction. Canelo Triple G3. What happens there?
So I'm working with Triple G. You tell me.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah. So you answer that one, brother.
I got you. I got you. Well, I definitely don't want to step on any toes. I feel like Canelo's too young, and we still haven't seen the best out of him. And as much as I love Triple G, I definitely think he's getting closer to that 40 years of age, and it's just going to be tough for him, man. It might be
Yeah.
tough for him.
Well, it's tough for anybody to get into that game. That's why I don't like being the armchair quarterback because even though your opinion sounds good, it don't mean nothing.
Yeah, that's
Till it
true.
actually happens, right?
That's true. That's
But if
true.
you ask me the probability of cuts, then I'm a little bit more capable of answering that kind of question.
For sure, for sure. Well, thank you so much again,
Of
Stitch.
course.
I hope I can get you back, hey, as soon as possible, my man.
Yeah, anytime. And good questions by your listeners. So you got some very astute listeners, man. And let's do it again anytime.
Thank you. This is Knucklehead Nation, and I'm very proud of them. Thank you so much, Stitch. You have a
Of course.
wonderful night, sir.
Thank you.